Hi guys, it's Sally. I've been absent for a while, but I'm back now, and I'm doing this awesome collaboration with Julia McNeill for Marie Curie Daffodil Appeal. It's a UK-based organization that helps cancer patients. All the information about that is listed in the description below, along with a list of all the supplies. So I put them up on the screen, but it's going to go too fast for you to see everything. So they're also in the description below. So I started with a piece of mixed media paper, and I took some distress paint and put it out on my craft mat and sprayed it with some water to water it down. And then I drug the edges of my paper through that paint mixture, and then took the dauber, and you see the little like circle spots. That's just from the dauber straight from the paint. So I kind of like the way that looks. And then I have some pieces from an old book page in matte medium, and I'm just going to start putting some papers down and gluing those with the matte medium. I like to use a straight edge when the paper is hanging off the edge like that to just remove the excess and turn any little bits to the back of the mixed media paper. So that's what I'm doing with that white plastic tool. I just lay it down on the table and pull that wet gluey paper up and kind of tuck any little bits to the back. There I am, just adding a little matte medium to secure those little bits on the back of the page. Matte medium dries really fast. And then I grab some gesso, and I'm going to just push some of this, the paper and the background, just going to push it back a little bit and tone it down. So I just add some gesso with a spatula and use my brayer to move it around. Then I grab some distress paint in a yellow. It's honey something. I'm not near my studio right now. I'm doing this voiceover, so but I brayer some of that onto the page to add some yellow, since that's our thematic color. And then I'm adding a little bit darker. It's a yellow ochre fluid acrylic that I watered down on the craft mat as well, and just letting some of that drip down the page. And then I also sprayed it after I added the drips, and then blotted it back a little. I have these old cheese company receipts. They're French, and so I made a copy of one that has the colors that I wanted, and I'm just tearing that down to get it to fit in the space where I want it to be on the piece. And then I'm just going to dry lay some of the papers that I have chosen and see if I like the way they look and where I want to put them. So that's what I'm doing here. I have a piece of a Wordsworth poem that mentions daffodils, and it's in his handwriting. It was from a British Museum website. I've had it a long time. I can't really even remember what the website was. So I'm just putting these papers down with some matte medium and drying those off as I go. And then I sketched out just with pencil onto a piece of paper the daffodils, and then I used the two colors of distress paint as well as the fluid acrylic paint in yellow ochre to colorize those a bit. I wanted to keep the colors fairly matte and not real bright so that it blends well with the old papers. But the theme is to use daffodils and or the color yellow in these collaboration pieces that we're doing. So I have a little of both. And then that little piece at the bottom, and I think I show you later on when I'm getting ready to glue it down, it's a sample chip of Formica, and you can get those free. Obviously they want you to grab them if you're going to have a new countertop put on, which I was contemplating at one point in time, and I did grab a few and then never got new countertops, so but I still have the chips, so I decided to use that because it was the right color. And then I have some vintage dress patterns, and that's what I put along that upper right hand side. It's just a piece from the edge of the pattern. It has just dotted lines and some numbers, and I'm just not brayering. I'm using a credit card to push any air bubbles out after I put the matte medium underneath and on top. And then for this, there's that Formica piece, and I'm gonna put that down with some heavy gel medium and push it down, and I wiped up the excess there. And then I'm gonna put that moth image across that, hanging off the bottom. And I'm sorry, I have the bottom corner of the piece out of frame, which is kind of par for the course for me. I just don't ever be able to seem to stay in frame. Then I decided to use some stencils, so I grabbed, and that was, I thought that was, there it is. It's called Specimens by the Crafters Workshop. So I'm going to put that down and use the Distress Ink and Walnut Stain, and I'm just going to apply it with the ink dauber. I like the way it looks when you're using the ink for the stencil, where it goes over the paper. It comes out just kind of diffused and not real clear. It looks real old. Then I just flipped the stencil over because I wanted to finish off that circle up at the top, and put some of those butterflies on there. I really like that stencil a lot. It's called Specimens by the Crafters Workshop. I'll link it below. And then I have this stamp that I got it on Amazon, and it came from China, and I had never used it before, so I was a little leery as to how well it was gonna stamp in the impression, but I was really pleased. As fine as it is, it came out really, really nice. If I was gonna do it again, I would use archival ink. I grabbed the Distress ink, not even thinking about the fact that it's going to keep smearing, and I really wanted to do more stuff on this, wet stuff, but is what it is. But it turned out really good. And then while I had the dauber full of the walnut stain ink, I went around the edges of the mixed media paper as well, just to kind of age those out, and dried everything off. Now I'm taking some acrylic ink in, I think it's Antelope Brown, in my water, and I just mixed those on my craft mat till it was just a watery consistency, because I wanted to bring some of those drips back. The yellow ones kind of got covered up, so I just decided I wanted some drips along the outside of this piece. Love me some drips. And then this is another Amazon stamp, or I got it from Amazon, but it came from China. And it has a lot of really neat just background elements, kind of mark making elements. But so I decided I wanted to use the lines, and I like the acetate sheets that have the printed image, because you can hold it up like I'm doing there and kind of gauge how big it's going to be, where you want to put it, whether it's going to look good or not. So I decided to use just those lines to kind of represent branches, because I have a little bird image from Fiskars. I think it's called For the Birds. Yep, For the Birds. So I just pulled that out. I wanted little blue birds to be sitting on those branches. So so this time I got smart and decided to pull out the archival inks to do those. So I'm just getting my stamp ready on my acrylic block. And again, like I say, that those acetate sheets are nice to be able to gauge where you want to put things. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, I'm deciding what ink, and I had originally pulled out my mini distress inks and then thought better of it, and so here I'm grabbing my archival inks. So I went with the, I forget, it's a brown, I can't remember the exact name. I'll put it in the description box with the supply links. So I just stamped those lines and then stamped the bird. I stamped the bird on my scrap paper there to see, and it looks really good against the white paper, but I wasn't real happy with the clarity of the birds. They just couldn't kind of look sort of blobby, so I grabbed a Pitt pen and I'm just going to outline the birds so you can better tell that they're birds. I gave them a little eye and made them look more like birds. Yeah, that's better. And the stamp had those little curly cues. You probably can't see it on my scrap paper, but I'm just kind of going over those, and I couldn't really even see the stamped image of those curly cues, so I just kind of added some of my own. And then I'm doing the same thing for the bird at the top. And I kept using artist tape to tape my paper down, try to prevent it from buckling, because I was really throwing a lot of wet media on this piece of paper and it was buckling. So I kept adding tape and taking it off, and it was in the way, and I put it back on and then it wouldn't stick. So you'll see me kind of fling that tape around on and off. It did some good, but it didn't do a whole lot of good. I really need to get better tape for, it's an artist tape. It should have held, but it didn't, so it was just kind of in the way. So we went around the daffodils with the Stabilo All pencil, and then also around that Formica tag, just to kind of bring those into the foreground and add some dimension and a little shadow behind them. I also picked up a little bit of that leftover brown acrylic ink in my brush, just to tone back the black Stabilo so it wasn't quite so dark. Then I have a heavyweight piece of chipboard. It's actually, I think, the back from a pad of paper, and I'm using the heavy gel medium to mount the, and I did let this dry really good before I glued it on, but I like to mount my paper pieces to something more substantial so that they can either stand or they could be framed. So that's what I'm doing here. And it takes a bit for it to dry. That's the hard part, waiting. But I like to use the clips around the edges just until it finishes drying, so that the edges don't curl back up off the chipboard. And there's my finished piece. So I hope you enjoyed watching me create this, and come back next week and see all of our creations for week 2 of the Marie Curie Daffodil Appeal. Until next time, go make some art. Bye.